Okay, so this week we hope maybe we'll actually finish the sugya to the Mishnah. Last week we thought so, but we had a very engaging discussion. Michael, thank you for the detail of our discussion. So now we're holding on Samach Ches Amud Aleph. We're about a little less than halfway down the daf. And last week we finished up by talking about, again, the subject is a property that is a mashkin from a love to a malve. And how do you avoid ribis? What do you do? I mean, the malve, it's pretty much is agreed that the malve can take a little bit of the fruit and reduce the pledge, in which case ribis means over and above what you've negotiated. Here, we're taking away from what you negotiated. So that's the theory. Of course, the Tzuvah Rabbanon don't do that, but that's the theory, is that we sort of cut off a little piece all the time, and in this way, it can't be a chashash ribis. Okay, so that's where we are. Now, in this final stretch, the Gemara is going to give us some halachas. The Gemara is going to tell us what's the halacha. We don't see this often, but the Gemara is going to sort of give us a list of some halachas that are permitted or not permitted in dealing with this subject. So the Gemara says, Omar Rava. Omar Rava, let's see, it's about, I don't know, maybe 10 lines from the top, middle of the line, 10, 11 lines. Omar Rava. Les Hilchasa. So Rav is giving us three instances where the halacha is not like what we're about to say. Les Hilchasa, the halacha is not b'tarshe paponya, Rav Papa's tarsha, which we learned a few weeks ago. We're going to just review. So the halacha is not like Rav Papa, and the halacha is lo kishtore mechoznoi. Mechuzah was also a Torah center, and they used to do certain shtoros. So the Gemara says, and we don't follow that. We don't follow the shtoros of Mechuzah. Below, Machichre Gorsheu. No, we don't follow. Narsheya was also a place where they used to do certain contracts, and we don't follow those. So clearly, these are important issues which we're now going to discuss, and the halacha is not like that. And why is it not like that? That's what we're going to. So in other words, there's a machlokes, and the halacha is not like it. So let's start off with Rav Papa. If you remember, we learned Tarshe Papunya is Rav Papa. Rav Papa had a tarsha. What's a tarsha? A tarsha is when you provide, let's say, a product, and you quote a price, and the price might be different today than, let's say, 6 months from now. So the question is, if you say to someone, you buy it today, it costs you $1. You buy it 6 months from now, it costs you $5. That's clearly usher, because then that's what we call, basically the way the halacha says it, because you waited, there was a higher price, and that's usher. That's usher.
With the seller or the buyer?
Say it again. Welcome.
I'm sorry, I'm late.
No problem. What's the question, Jay?
So when you say it's usher for the seller to do that, or the usher for the buyer?
It's a good question. Very good question. So we're going to say, for all intents and purposes, that the whole deal can't be done. The whole deal from both sides. But it's a good question. You'll see why in a minute. Okay. So what is this Tarsha Rav Papa? So Rav Papa came up with a chiddush, and he said, based on what other had said as well, you know what? You know when it's usher, when I give you two prices, a price today and a price in the future. But and Rav Papa, by the way, he was a very wealthy man, and he was in the beer business, which seems to be a good business to be in. And he manufactured the beer, he sold it. Now, when he sold it in Tishrei, there was an abundance of beer. Everybody was selling beer. The price was less. He didn't quote a price, but the price clearly was less. But in Nisan, when there was a scarcity of beer, the price went up. So if he were to say, you buy it today, it's $1, you buy it in 6 months, it's $5, the usser. But if he says, I have beer and I'm selling it for $5, you want it today? Fine. You want it in 6 months? Fine. Why? Because I have the best beer in town. My beer doesn't spoil, so you can buy it and have it when there's a scarcity of beer. But I'm not discounting for you if you buy it today. Now, without even saying what the price is today, the buyer can shop and he can go around and he can actually, oh, I can buy beer for $1. Why am I buying Rav Papa's beer for $5? Because in essence, Rav Papa is telling you, I don't need your acquisition today. He was a wealthy man. He said, you don't have to buy by me. But if you're going to buy by me, I'm going to give you the best beer and when nobody has beer. So that's Tarsha to Rav Papa. Rav Papa said, I'm going to give you, Tarsha means a credit. I'll give you credit, but it won't be risk. It won't be any chashash of anything because I'm doing a straight sale. And as long as I don't say today this, next week, next month that, I'm off the hook. That was Rav Papa's Chiddush. Says the Gemara, we don't hold from that, right? The halach is not like Tarsha to Rav Papa. In other words, you can't get around the fact that you don't only have to give two prices, right? That even if you give one price and it's a delayed purchase, it's a problem. So in other words, the Gemara is very much machmir, because why should I suffer? I mean, and to your point, Jay, now the question is going to be,
where's the rivers?
But right, from whose perspective do you look at it? Do you look at it from the seller's perspective, or do you look at it from the buyer's perspective? From the seller's perspective, okay, no problem. He can wait, and therefore he says it's fine. But from the buyer's perspective, the waiting, the delay in waiting is in and of itself. It's not quite ribis, Jay, you're right, but it's an ancillary halacha that you cannot delay a sale with an ultimatum. And here the Gemara is telling us that even without the ultimatum, because Rav Papa doesn't give an ultimatum, he just says straightforward, I'm giving you one price and this is what it is. And you can buy it now or you can buy it in 6 months. So the Gemara says that we don't like that because that raises question. It's not directly ribis, but it raises the chashash that they negotiated a contract and that the price of the contract was perhaps more than it should be, so it smacks of ribis even if it isn't ribis. This is one of those situations where clearly you can't say definitively it was ribis, but it smacks of it. So from the seller's point of view, everything's okay because he's providing a service. I'm giving you the best beer, and you'll have it when nobody else has it. But from the buyer's standpoint, he's concerned because he needs the beer now, and Rav Papa is charging him a very high price for the beer. Now you could say you could buy it somewhere else, but let's say they ran out. And it's in this season, he's now stuck from the buyer's perspective. So that's the issue here is how do we look at this? Do we look at it from the seller's standpoint or do we look at it from the buyer's standpoint?
What are we trying to protect?
We're trying to
abuse
the buyer. With the abuse, right? We're trying to protect the abuse, but we're trying to protect the buyer. I mean, we protect the whole Indian. We're trying to protect, but we're trying to protect the buyer that he should not have to. Remember, in ribis, everybody's guilty, right? We're not singling anybody out, but we're saying that we're protecting the buyer that he shouldn't be in a squeeze where he's going to wind up paying more than he should,
Yeah.
more than he should, because Rav Papa can do that. Because Rav Papa can do that. So Rav Papa wanted to be mechadish that I have something that nobody else has, and therefore you pay for it. But as long as I don't say the magic words, today $1, 6 months $5. That is what Rav Papa is hanging his hat on. As long as I don't say that, everything is okay. Says the Gemara, no. We're not going to abide by that rule, that it doesn't matter whether you said it or didn't say it. If you negotiate a deal that is only going to be consummated in 6 months from now, and you charge whatever you charge, and we know without having said it that the price is less,
But
that's a problem.
does the buyer want the beer right now? Because you said that a moment ago. If he wants the beer right now, then it has nothing to do with 6 months.
No, but so there may be alternatives for him to buy it, or he has to pay Rav Papa's higher price. So in other words, if he has the money and someone is selling it, this is not an issue. The only issue is that in reality he may not need the beer right now.
That's a different situation.
Right. So he wants it then when nobody else is going to have beer except
Okay,
Rav
that
Papa.
makes that closes up everything, the questions.
Right. So only Rav Papa will be the beer market, and he's going to charge what he charges because he says that to me is the right price. It's only because I have to discount it today because I'm competing, but I don't want to compete. I don't want to compete. I want to have one price. And I'm
Right.
good with today. I'm good with 6 months from now. So that was Rav Papa's.
You don't have to buy. You're in a store.
That's right.
You don't have to buy,
You don't have to buy.
even though it's better than other sources. But you don't have to buy. That's the
Yeah, but
price.
right. But if you buy to have it in 6 months, then you're paying more than what the price should be, and that's where the issue comes in is that
But the price in 6 months would be $5 for anybody who had some beer,
right.
because the demand was so high and the supply was very low. So I'm still troubled by the fact that it's a $5 beer when the market is very scarce.
Right.
And it's a $1
But
when there's plenty of
right, but Rav
beer.
Papa is theoretically he's overcharging tremendously in Tishrei when everybody has beer because he's charging 5 and everybody else may be charging 1. So that smacks of some kind of illegitimate transaction,
Overcharging, yeah.
overcharging. So in his defense, Rav Papa says, I'm not overcharging. You want to buy it? I'm not even putting it on the market. You want it? This is what you pay. But keep in mind that what you're going to buy is the best beer in town when nobody else has beer. So that was his chiddush, and the Gemara says, no, we don't buy it.
Well, he's just selling the product as the best it is. So why should that shouldn't have any conflict? If somebody wants the best of it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't have to buy it. You're not
Right,
forced
right.
to do it.
But the issue, David, is that you're right. But the issue is that because you waited until Nisan to buy it and pay the higher price, that's something that the Rabbanan didn't want to happen because they said that smacks of someone taking advantage of the market by charging a higher price for a product that can be bought less expensive. Rav Papa says, go buy it somewhere else. You're buying from me, you're buying a
Not the
premium.
same quality, though.
What's that?
It's part of the scenario is if you go buy it somewhere else for $1, it's not the same quality.
Not the same quality, exactly. So
I don't see what's wrong. If just like what David just said, I have much better product. I'm going to charge what I can get for it, $5. You don't want to buy it now? Fine. It's always going to be $5, whatever I sell. 6 months, 9 months.
Right. And also, he's guaranteed
Something's
that
missing.
okay, so let me just amplify one other thing. The question is, when is the payment made? Okay, we didn't talk about this. When is the payment made? The payment is going to be made in 6 months from now, not now. You don't pay Rav Papa's beer, 5 seller, let's say, today. You pay it in 6 months. So if you pay it in 6 months, it looks like Rav Papa is taking ribbis. He's taking advantage or a benefit because there was a period of waiting. And that the halacha says you can't do because that it's not ribbis, certainly, but it smacks of ribbis because he's not getting paid. He's taking the payment at a later date, and people will say, "Oh, wait a minute, he's paying 5 sloim. It only should be 1 seller." So Rav Papa is making a profit of all these of 4 sloim. Let's say he makes a profit because he waited 6 months, and
But
that's
did he take the beer at the beginning of the 6 month? I mean, did he take the beer today and he's paying it 6 months later?
um, not
Probably.
necessarily. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
The scenario is just troubling me, and Michael is really trouble. I'm sorry I missed whatever you had discussed before I showed up.
No.
Okay.
So, all right. So let's recast this. I sell you the beer. I'm making a deal with you to sell you beer, which you will pick up in Nissen and pay me in Nissen. But I'm charging you a price today, which is which is more than what the market is. So both the beer and the payment happen later. So, says the Gemara. So if Papa says that's okay as long as I did not say you pay me now it's a dollar, you pay me then it's $5. But in his scenario, if Papa says it's okay, the Gemara says why is it okay? It still looks like he's benefiting from the deal because the buyer was wanting to buy in Tishrei, and for waiting till listen, he has to pay a premium. That's what smacks of ribbis. That's what the Gemara says. Why Rav Papa, the halacha is not like Rav Papa, because that smacks of ribbis. The Rav Papa is benefiting from the fact that he makes a deal today. The deal is done today, but isn't consummated until Nisan 6 months from now.
But there's no delivery now.
There's no delivery now. There's no delivery now. But the deal, we're talking about the actual
Yeah,
concept of the deal.
but the buyer will know that in 6 months from now the price is really $5.
It's going to go up because of supply and demand. If there's not enough,
Right.
everybody's going to charge more if they can get it. And if they can't get it, well, they're all out of it.
Right. So the Gemara wants to. Okay. So if you take the position of the buyer, that's Rav Papa. If you take to answer your question, Jay, if you take Rav Papa's position, that's perfectly fine. But if you take the buyer's position, the buyer is saying, why should I pay $5 for beer in Nissen when I only have to pay $1 now? And you're going to say,
don't do it. Then don't do it.
Then don't do it. You're going to say
Don't do it.
don't do it. But okay, so the Gemara so what we're saying is we're trying to protect the buyer, that the buyer should not be taken advantage of. That just because, let's say the buyer says, Rav Papa, here's $1, and I want the beer in Nissen. Then there wouldn't be a problem. Here's the price. Everybody's charging $1, but I don't need it right now, so I'll pick it up in Nissen.
Hold it in your warehouse.
Put it in your warehouse, right? Rav Papa says, no, I'm not doing that. It's $5. You want it today, it's $5. You want it in Nissen, it's $5. So, not that it's ribbis, but it smacks of something improper if you're looking at it from the perspective of the buyer. Not Rav Papa's perspective, Jay, but from the perspective of the buyer, he's being taken advantage of. And that's what the Chazal is saying.
He's
Right?
not taking advantage of. If he doesn't want to pay the $5, don't take it. Get the dollar one that he can get right now. Why is he so insistent? The other one is a better beer. He wants the better beer. If he wants it to wait, that's what it's for. It's not for now, it's for later. If you want it, you buy it now and hoard it. You keep it.
No, well, again, you're correct, but the Chazal, the rabbis are saying that we want to protect the buyer, that the buyer shouldn't be in a position where he's overpaying just because he waited. Now, you're right. Let him go buy from someone else. Okay. Now, and the market is flooded with beer, but he doesn't need the beer today. So buying from someone who has the beer today isn't going to help him 6 months from now. Says the halacha here, Rav Papa can't take advantage of the fact that he can wait 6 months and deliver the beer better, well, I'll say better beer, but he can deliver it in 6 months when no one else has beer. Gemara says he shouldn't be able to do that. That's how the halacha comes out. Now you may argue and say that's not fair, but that's what they're saying is the halacha. Now, this all changes. So Rav Papa felt, you know what? As long as I don't give an either or, $1 today, $5 then, I'm off the hook. Says the Gemara, the halacha, you're not off the hook. Just because you said $5 today or later on, you're still in the same position. And therefore, it's taking advantage. What it is, it's taking advantage. Now, you're right, David. What, take advantage? You know, let him buy from somebody else. Okay, so.
But we had earlier in this Gemara discussions about quality and about buying the price right now. This
Right.
sounds like an earlier scenario, and there's a dispute on whether or not a better beer is worth $5. I mean, so back in the earlier sessions of the Gemara, there were sellers who had beer for $1, and there's one, Rav Papa happens to have a store that it costs $5 because the beer is better. That was considered okay. The person had a choice. You want a better beer, you pay $5. I mean, liquor is the same thing today. You can buy liquor, the price difference in liquor can be enormous.
Yeah.
$100 a bottle is not a big deal today if you want that quality.
Right. Well, so
the obvious question is why the Chazal are not adjudicating this under the laws of Ono instead of.
I was about to say that. So no, the laws of Ono, but the Ono only works when there's an even playing field. When the playing field is not the same, meaning there's a better beer and a worse beer, you can't hold someone accountable for a price and say, oh, he's overcharging when the beer isn't the same as what he's buying on the market. So Ono only works when everybody agrees that there's one price for the beer, and I want to charge a substantial amount more. If Papa's saying, I agree with you, but my beer is not like anybody else. And because my beer is not like anyone else, there cannot be a no issue because the quality is what it is. Again, it's a little bit of a strain here, and your points are well taken. But again, when the Chazal say the halacha is not like Rav Papa, it's to preserve the I want to say integrity, but to preserve that the buyer should not be penalized.
Ripped off. Yeah.
He should not be penalized because he is going to wait until Nisan to get the beer. The price should be the same. So if Papa said, when I agree with you, when you can buy it for $1 today and $5 then. But I'm not selling it for $1. I'm only selling for $5. You don't have to buy by me. But he's putting the pressure on the buyer because nobody's going to have beer in Nisan. Only Rav Papa will have beer in Nisan. And if I want the beer in Nisan, I'm stuck buying
making a deal now.
A deal now for a higher price. Yeah. Exactly. All right.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Okay. It would be okay if he waited until Nissan when nobody had beer and sold it for $10. That's okay.
Right.
because he waited and you're protecting the buyer. And here the guy is saying, I am selling, my price doesn't change. So I'm selling it $5 today and I'm selling it $5 in Nissan. I have a better quality and I'm guaranteeing you I will have product to sell in Nissan. So you make a contract with me, and you made a big point about saying he doesn't pay him now. It'd be worse if he paid him now because then he'd have the use of the money for all that time.
Right, right.
So the thing is that you're not protecting anybody because everybody else is going to sell it at a lower price. They have a lower quality, and so then he could wait until Nissan sell it for $15 because of demand and there's no supply, and that would be better for everyone. That's what this presumes.
Right. So to your point, Michael, you're absolutely right. If this whole deal was that I'm selling it in Nissan for $15, that's what I'm selling. I'm not selling it today. Once she says I'm selling it today, and we'll put it aside, but I'm going to charge you the higher price. That is what, again, there's no pressure on a buyer to buy from this guy. The only pressure is that he's in the marketplace to buy beer for Nissan, not for
But
Tishrei.
he's going to have supply in Nissan. So what you're saying, I don't know. We went
No, no.
down.
So no, you're right. The Havamina is that Rav Papa should be okay. The Havamina is that what Rav Papa is doing is perfectly okay. The halacha is not like that because theoretically, what's happening here is because the buyer is waiting till Nissan to actually make the transaction. That seems to be some kind of benefit that smacks of, but isn't directly, but smacks of ribis because Rav Papa is making more money, but you could say supply and demand. Let him make more money if that's what he wants. But again, to your point, if he waited until Nissan and came on the market and Nissan says my beer is $15, buy it or not. But the fact that he's selling it in Tishrei for Nissan, that's where the Chazal object to Rav Papa's form of Tarshish. That's
If he can buy it for $1 as opposed to $5, why doesn't he buy 5 bottles now and save it for them?
well, apparently,
Or $10. How much he wants, he can get as much as he wants and put it in his bag, in his pantry.
so apparently, and again, it seems that if he was to buy it today and wanted for Nissan, it wouldn't be good.
Well, that's his problem. Then don't buy it.
Right. No.
Not make a contract.
The Gemara is trying to protect, again, there's nothing wrong from a Papa standpoint. Let's get it clear. The Gemara is only saying, why do you look at it from a Papa standpoint and he's doing the right thing? Look at it from the buyer standpoint, being squeezed, that Rav Papa is coming onto the market. If Rav Papa was silent, he's not smart. No issue. Into the marketplace to compete with other buyers. He said, you know what? You want beer? I'll sell it to you today. We'll transact it in Nissan, but you're going to pay $5. As now, that doesn't sit well with us because the buyer is now in a pinch. If he buys beer today for today, that's okay. If buyer says, I don't need beer today, I need beer in Nissan, and there's no market, nobody's selling beer for Nissan, that's okay. But the fact that Republican
$15, in other words, he decided to sell it, and he said he was the only supplier. He could charge whatever he wanted. Chazal would be fine with that, even though he's screwing the buyer. On the other hand, he knows that he's going to be the only one who has. I'm not on my price throughout the year. My quality is better. I'm taking orders today. So, and you may need fresh at that point in time. You're not able to do that. So is this the issue about trying to, so he hasn't changed his market price, but it's higher than the market. As David Hornestay said, that's Ona. That's where Ona comes in if there's an issue, but we distinguish between quality. So they're combining two thoughts. They're shifting. What's worse for the buyer is that he doesn't announce it at all, and then when there's no other on the market, he could have gotten it for $5 and he's paying 15, and that screws the buyer. So Chazal is being very short-sighted in that thinking.
Right. So the bottom line, okay, Michael, is, and the Gemara said this a few blot earlier, that if you pay more, just generally speaking, if you pay more because you waited for a later period to do the transaction, in other words, I made a transaction now, but didn't consummate, but we agreed on it and consummated it in 6 months. That in and of itself, say the Chazal, we don't like. It isn't directly ribis, but it's not something that we want people to engage in. Again, if Rav Papa withheld his position from the marketplace in Tishrei and only appeared in the market in Nisan and says, "I've got beer and I want to charge. I'm charging 10, whatever it is. I'm charging 10 sloim for the beer." Not a problem. But the fact that he introduces his beer in the marketplace when everybody else is charging $1, albeit inferior beer, okay, but everybody else is charging $1, and the fellow says, "I don't need this beer today. I want it in 6 months." And he said, "Fine, it's $5." Say the Chazal, that we don't like. We don't like that he is introducing a product today that will be more expensive than anything else because he waited for 6 months. That waiting for 6 months, say the Chazal, is not proper. That's what it is. That's the issue.
Rabbi, would the same thing apply to land? So I'm going to sell you a piece of land, and we agree on a time period, but I'm going to wait till the harvest is over. And this land is it's more fertile than even land adjacent to it, and I set a higher price. Is the problem is this because it's in the future? Because you should be able to contract, timing wise, what from a business perspective, what's better, and it's going to be a higher price. I'm going to set the price higher than it is now, but my land is worth more. Is the same thing true in land, that you can't set that? You can't set a purchase agreement to buy land in the future because you're waiting till the harvest comes, or alternatively, you're waiting so that everything grows and the guy takes on the harvest and it's a higher price, and the Chazal would have a problem with that too.
Yeah, but so I think that what troubles us is that we're chilling the marketplace because Rav Papa should be able to sell the beer at any price he wants, as long as he does not say buy it now for $1, buy it. That the Chazal didn't want, but Rav Papa's chiddush was, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's $5 all the time, today, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, and what the Chazal are saying, and from Rav Papa's standpoint, there's no issue. That's okay.
But from the buyer standpoint, there should be no issue because this is a better quality, and he's establishing a price that I'm going to sell for all time. And the guy says, "Well, I'm going to need it in Nissan, so I'm going to buy it now. It's a contract for a future purchase in Nissan. This is the same price he sells all year round. I'm going to have it in Nissan." And he decides he wants to take it early. Why is that? Even have appearance of being against.
The reason, Michael, is because the rule is, and this is where the essence of the issue is. The rule is, and this is Rav Papa's mistake. Rav Papa offered the beer today, and he said, "But I'm charging you $5 because I can deliver in Nisan." So the buyer is going to say, "Oh, you can deliver in Nisan, so I'll pay you the $5, even though it only cost me $1 today."
But it doesn't cost them $1 today. It costs them $5 today.
Only Rav Papa's beer. Only Rav Papa's beer is $5.
Rav Papa's beer is
Get it
the
somewhere
best
else.
there is.
Right, Michael, you're right. He should, David, he should get it from somewhere else, except that the Chazal say to make it a level playing field, Rav Papa should have no advantage over any other seller who's selling beer for $1. Now, you could argue, but my beer is better and I can do it in 6 months. The Chazal don't want to know from that. They don't want to
Well,
agree.
but we talked about quality. There's a quality. It's the same.
They're trying to normalize the quality and discouraging any variation in
Nobody
quality.
else has that quality.
And that should be a no-no against the Rabbanan because they're trying to neutralize the whole market to one.
Except the Rabbanan don't look at it that way. They're looking at it from the perspective only of
The buyer.
the buy. If you wait 6 months, you pay more money. You're right. All the things you said are right, except the Chazal want to protect the buyer by saying he shouldn't have to pay more for waiting 6 months. Oh, you're right. It's better quality. It's on the market. Other stuff isn't on the market. The Chazal say that's not material to us. What's material is that he's going to wind up paying more money than anybody else.
But that,
And I mean, you can argue correctly. Oh, but it's better beer. It's this, that, and the other. But the overarching issue is he paying more because he waited 6 months,
but the
albeit better
seller is
beer,
happy.
albeit better beer.
I think in Manhattan, this discussion would switch from beer to diamonds because people buy diamonds
Absolutely.
now, or somebody says, I'm going to get engaged in 6 months from now. And
Right.
that's when I want the ring. And they'll
But
say,
they
hold
pay
one
for it
second.
now, though. But
What?
Jay, they pay for that diamond now. They don't pay for it when you get the ring 6 months from now. Nobody's
That's
going to hold that for them.
But diamond prices might go up for
It might
whatever
go-
reason.
No, but you
Well,
locked it in because
yeah.
you paid now. David's correct. You bought it now, so there's no longer an issue. But by waiting the 6 months and you bought the diamond in 6 months from now, that's where the Chazal have a problem because
The market's different 6 months from
yeah,
now.
but you negotiated it today. You should negotiate it today and say, you're right. No one has to buy Rav Papa's beer. No one's putting a gun to his head that he should buy Rav Papa's beer. But the Chazal is saying that Rav Papa is forming an advantage in the marketplace because of his position. Rav Papa says, no, as long as I have beer that's better quality and I can sell it in Nissen, I should do that. The Chazal say, no, you can't. That you can't take advantage of the marketplace by saying that I will sell it to you in 6 months.
Well, let me
Don't
ask
be in
you,
the market.
let me ask
And
you
in Nissen,
a different question.
what?
What happens if you agree? Okay, I will pay you the $5. I'll buy it now, and I'll receive it in this. Let's say now, over the time, you didn't pay anything yet because you're paying them later on, and that wine, beer or whatever, it loses its fermentation. It's ruined. So now, is that fellow that bought it or said he wants it? If he wants to buy now from somebody else, he's going to have to buy from somebody else for $15. Is he going to want that Rapapa to pay him the difference between the $5 and the $15? Because now he has to buy the 15.
No, because then Chazal would say that it was a mekach tos, it was a mistaken sale because Rav Papa what?
You avoid the contract
You avoid the contract because Rav Papa couldn't deliver. He's not mechuyev to pay the difference to $15. He's just mechuyev to deliver what he promised, and he can't deliver.
So the contract's finished.
Rabbi,
Where
And no
I'm
money
lost.
exchange.
Rabbi, I want to.
No. Look, I understand the issues that everybody's having here is why it is not fair for a puppet to be a merchant in the marketplace.
But Rabbanan should be against Rav Papa, period.
That's why they're saying the halal. Rav Papa was mechadesh, and the rabbis are saying we don't buy it. We're not buying Rav Papa's argument that you can do this and still get away with not. The issue here is, and again, I'll emphasize, if Rav Papa said nothing, and Nissan, he came on the market and he says, I'm charging $5, $10, whatever it is. No one would have a problem. The problem is because he came into the marketplace when everybody else was in the marketplace. And he said, I have beer and I'm charging $5 and you can get it now or later. That's where the Chazal is saying, because, again, keep in mind, because he gave an option that I can deliver better beer later, that's the fallacy. That's what Chazal is saying. We don't buy the fact that Rav Papa is better beer later. Then he shouldn't sell it on the market today. He should wait until listen. Why is he selling it today and competing with other people? He's making other people believe I have a better beer. I'll charge more money.
Rabbi, you said with diamonds that it was okay because he made the purchase today. Are you saying that if Rob Papa sold the beer today and took the money today because I don't want the beer today, I want it in Nissan,
Yeah,
and he took the money for that sale, it would be okay. But
it would be
because he
okay.
doesn't take any money, it's not okay.
That's what the Gemara is saying. That's because he didn't take money. That the price was because of the delay, as opposed to I'm buying it today,
on
but
the
I'm
other
keeping it
hand,
in your
he held
warehouse.
onto the money for 6 months
Right.
and for
No,
nothing.
but the deal was consummated today, Michael. The deal is done. So there's no issue of, oh, I'm waiting 6 months. You and I transacted. The only thing is, I'll pick it up in 6 months.
So the issue is the future payment. So you can make that transaction. He can sell it as long as he takes the money today for the higher price beer, for the higher quality beer. He
Right.
takes the money, it's fine.
Right.
You can't have him pay it in the future.
That's correct. That's what the Gemara is saying is the problem with Rav Papa's Tarshish is that he waited to take the payment for 6 months, and it seems to be that there was a benefit for waiting. If he bought it right away at the beginning and paid the $5, no one would have any argument that there wasn't a deal. He sold him better beer. He paid $5 today, and he'll pick it up in 6 months. That's like any other transaction. The Chazal have the problem because it seems like, again, this is appearances. It seems like he paid more for consummating a deal 6 months from now, and that's what the Chazal object to, that the deal was consummated in 6 months and he paid more money.
But what Chazal is oblivious to because they don't believe in interest is the fact that the time value of money is meaningless. The fact that the guy could, if he said, if I buy it from me today for 450 for delivery in 6 months. If you buy it from me in 6 months, it'll cost you $5. That's it's okay for him to lower the price than to take advantage early because it's benefiting the buyer. They're not worrying about it. But I understand there's no interest in Chazal's comprehension.
Okay, so
The fact that you could do another deal earlier because you have that money is not factored into this decision.
yeah, no, I hear the objection. I think at the end of the day, to sort of sum this up, is that the Chazal said, if you make a deal like everybody else, I sell you the beer, you pay me today, you want it in 6 months, fine, pick it up in 6 months. Nobody has a problem. The problem, according to Chazal, is that Rav Papa is making a deal now for the future. And because he's making a deal for the future, that is a problem because the delay between Tishrei and Nisan is what's costing more money. And that the Chazal said, we don't buy that. We don't want that to be. But if I paid it today, fine. You decided to pay $5 for your beer today. It's as if to say, Michael, I'm buying a better diamond.
But today
Okay.
we have a workaround, Rabbi. Today that wouldn't even enter into our minds because we have workarounds with interest. So
Right.
today would not be an issue. So we found a way to work around that somehow,
Right. Right.
where that eliminated that and takes into account the time value of money, and
Yeah.
so basically that halacha is no longer relevant. If I'm
Okay, and again, whether it's relevant today or not, I mean, this would be a difficult halacha to deal with today. But again, the Gemara is saying for all practical purposes that when it comes to Tarshish, to credit, purchases on credit, the fact that you get that you have to, from the buyer's standpoint, the fact that you're paying more because you're waiting 6 months is a problem. I don't think that that's a practical question today, because if you buy, let's say you buy a layaway or you buy something on credit, you're not paying more because you're going to get it in 6 months. You're paying incrementally. But if I'm going to pay more because I'm going to get it in 6 months, Chazal say we have a problem with that. It shouldn't be. That's an uneven market, and it's a problem for the buyer, not for Papa, but for the buyer, that he is being charged more money. Again, we
One
can
last
go.
point, Rabbi. One last point. There is a risk that in 6 months, that seller may not be around for whatever reason. He sold out. God forbid something happened to him. So the fact is, I'm taking risk by paying today. I have to pay today. I can't pay it in the future. I'm
He's
paying.
not paying today, though.
He's not paying today.
No, he is paying today. If what we said was, if if he were to pay today, it was an allowable transaction.
Correct.
6 months from now. So
Oh.
my point is that in 6 months from now,
He may not be around.
he may not be around. He may lose. So the buyer is at risk that this could have, God forbid, something happens.
Correct. Then he has to. That's right. He's at risk.
He's at risk. So that doesn't factor into the question about what's in the buyer's interest. So he paid the money. He has to pay it now. He can't pay it in the future. There's a disadvantage to paying it now, but from
I agree with you. I agree with you. There's a disadvantage to paying it now, and there's a risk that maybe the beer or if Papa won't be around, or the beer won't be around.
Right.
And that's a risk he has to be willing to take. And there may be different issues there, but the underlying issue of our case is strictly one thing. Chazal said a person should not be penalized to pay a higher price for waiting. And I agree with you 100%. And what David said was correct. You can go ahead and buy it today and pay for it today and get your beer today, except that the buyer will be at a disadvantage because he doesn't need the beer today. He wants it in 6 months. And the only way to get it in 6 months is to pay more money than the market would bear today. So Rav Papa says, as long as I don't give you an either or, $1 today, $5 in Nisan, it's okay. And Chazal say, nope, it doesn't matter if it's $1 today and $5 then. The fact that you're charging $5 and disadvantaging the buyer, we're protecting the buyer. It's a mechanism for protecting a buyer. And again, in our marketplace, this may sound very bizarre because people transact like this. You know, you put. I don't know if as a practical matter, that's what we do today in business. Usually, you put your money down today for the future. But if I make a deal with you and I lock in a price in 6 months, and you'll pay me in 6 months, for the product, then in and of itself, that should not be a problem. Chazal had a problem with it because the buyer was stuck. He had no way of getting beer in Nisan unless he paid the higher price. We have to leave it at that. It's frustrating. I understand, Michael, but let's leave it there for now, because this is a subject that clearly has very, very, very difficult two sides. But let's just go to there were two other things that Rava said were not the halacha, and I just want to touch on them. Okay, so what is mechuzah? What does it mean, the shtori mechuzah? The shtori mechuzah was as follows. Here's the scenario, and this is a very viable scenario for us. Okay, you and I, Michael, go into business. I'm supplying the money, and you doing the work. Okay, that's a ma'aseh b'chol yom. People enter into a deal. Well, I'm going to put up the money. I'm going to buy a product, you're going to sell the product, and we're going to agree to split the profits. Okay? All the time. Now, so what happens here? What happens here in Mechuzah, they said, you know what? We're not going to say that if you put up $100 for the product and I went ahead and sold the product, and whatever the profits are, we're going to split. Let's anticipate what the profits might be. So they anticipate the profits will be, let's say, 50%. We're going to sell it for 50% of the profit. You'll get 25%, I'll get 25, which means that when we sell it, you'll get your $100 back on your product plus $50, and I'll make $50 just for the service. Okay? That's what they did in Mechuzah. Except in Mechuzah, they said, you know what? The deal is that I invested 150, not 100 to get 50 back. I invested 150. I have $150 now vested in this transaction. So that changes the dynamic, because if I have 150 in the transaction, not 100, right? So I'm getting the benefit of $50 into my capital. No risk. I get $50 back. I have $150 now in the deal. So now the question becomes, what happens if they don't make the profit? What happens if they don't make the profit? They make only 10%. In which case, the guy with the money, the guy who's financing the deal, is losing money, because his deal was for 150 and he's only going to get, let's say, 120. So he'll lose 30. The merchant is going to get what he gets, but he has no money vested in it. So he'll get his whatever, $20. The financer will get his $20, and the financer will take a loss of $30. Right? That's what they used to do in Mechuzah. In other words, so the Gemara says, if that's the case, then that's a problem, because it will look like the financier is, he's making a loan to the merchant, right? Making a loan to the merchant, and the profit that he was to take, it doesn't materialize. We have a problem with that, said Chazal, because if that's the case, then it wasn't a risk that it wasn't a risk that the financier was to take. I'll lend you 100. We'll split the profits. Whatever happens, happens. Okay, if it's less, it's less. But if you owe me 150.
Frozen. It's like we lost them. Hopefully they'll come back.
Regardless of whether or not we made 150 loan, then he's actually getting. The loan was for 100, and he's going to wind up paying 150, regardless of whether the deal was made. I mean, if they made the profit. So if they didn't make the profit, then it looks like ribbis on the part of the merchant who is selling it, and he has to dig into his pocket and pay more for the loan than what was anticipated. Says the Gemara, the Bnei Mechuzah, we're not going to buy that. We're not going to buy a deal like that where you become a larger shareholder, and if it doesn't materialize, the other fellow's got to pay you more money.
Isn't that ribbis for him to get?
That's ribbis. Exactly, David. That's ribbis, because now I'm paying you more money for the loan, because the loan was for 100 and we were supposed to get 50. Now I have to dig into my pocket and pay you more. That's why it's ribbis.
So he can't do it.
So the Gemara says we do not allow the shtorei mechuzah. We don't allow this kind of transaction because it will be ribbis. It's exactly the point. In mechuzah, they went ahead and did that, and they said, oh, it's perfectly acceptable. And the Chazal say we don't abide by that halacha because it is ribbis. In Mechuzah, they felt, oh, it's a deal. I transact a deal, we make a deal. But when you pull the deal apart, you realize that he has a loan for 100 and was supposed to pay back 50% of the profit, and now he's got to pay him more than 50% of the profit because it didn't reach the profit level. It didn't reach the level of $50. It only was $20, but he committed to him, so he's got to pay him more money for that loan. That's what looks like ribbis, 100%. Okay? That the Gemara says is not acceptable. And okay. So now okay, so the third part is we're going to get to in a minute, but this is a very interesting sort of sidebar.
Wait,
So-
one question about that. If you and I are partners and in the same situation, and I want $50 towards the money I'm lending to you, that 100.
That should be my profit. That should be my profit.
Right. So in other words, but you're telling me that if we go into business, we can't set an amount that we want to make and then charge the people for that? How do you make money then?
No. But David, the problem will be if you don't make that profit. Let's say you don't reach $50 in profit, but in Mechuzah, they took that profit money and put it into the capital. It's as if the lender put that amount of money in. He already anticipated his profit. And now the profit doesn't materialize, but he's going to come to the merchant and he's going to claim, pay me. I have 100.
I see. I understand. I thought,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't realize that he already wanted the 150.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So if he gets David, if he gets the 150, we have no problem. But if it's only 130, and the merchant now says, I mean the money guy says, pay me my 150. He said, but
Right.
that's not what we agreed upon. 50% of the profits. Then it will look like ribbis because he's right. Then it will look like ribbis. Okay.
I understand you. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the Gemara. Now there's an interesting sidebar. Omele Mar Barav Amemar Ravashi. Mar, the son of Amemer, said to Ravashi, so v'chi also lekame mehemen lehu. In Amemer's world, he was a paisik. So when they came to him and said, "This is the scenario which we just posited. What do we do?" Omale. So Amemer said to him, Tena hecha de isolidide. So in other words, so when the merchant came back to the money guy and said, "I'm sorry, we didn't make the goal. We didn't make the profit." The problem is that the financier says, "Pay me my money." Maimer says, "In my world, the financier will forego that profit." In other words, if it came to me and someone said to me, "Where's the money?" I'll say, "We didn't make the profit. I can only pay you 50% of what we made, not what 50% of what we agreed upon at the outset." So in a Maimer's world, that wouldn't be a problem. Why? Because there is no ribbis. There's no ribbis when the merchant is only paying 50% of what was actually made rather than 50% of what was agreed upon. So the son of Amemer said, in my father's world, when he gave a psak, that's not a problem because he would say that the merchant has an amonis to say we didn't make the profit. And because we didn't make the profit, I can only give you 50% of what was made, not what we agreed upon at the outset. So therefore, there's no ribbis because I'm only giving you 50% of what was made. I'm not mechuyev, I'm not meshubit to you for more money because we didn't make the profit. That's what a Maimer said. Okay, so a Maimer was very lenient in order to not allow this situation to develop into ribbis. So he said, okay, we're going to back off. Says the Gemara, Tene hechad is today. Okay, so this is all fine. And this is an interesting Gemara here. Everything is good as long as Maimar is around and you come to him and he's a Paisek and he says, you know what? This is how we're going to slice the deal, and you're only going to get 50% of what was made. Says the Gemara, this is very unusual. Ishachiv v'nafel shtora kame yasme mai. What happens if Amem is not around? And this deal came before his Yisomim, meaning his inheritors. And they said, we don't abide by what a Maimer said. We want 50% of what the deal was that we were struck. You didn't make the profit, your problem, not ours. So the Gemara is asking a kasha on a Maimer was lenient, and we okay, let's hold like a Maimer. But can a Maimer guarantee that if he's not there to apply this leniency, that his Yorshim aren't going to claim the full amount, in which case it would be ribbis? Right? This is very unusual, because as long as a Maimer is around, got it, he can paskin. But if a Maimer is not around, what do we say? So the Gemara says, so what happened here? Have bishkoga sheyotza mufnei hashalit. There's a famous pasuk, I think it's a Mishle, that when the shalit, when the ruler says something accidentally, it comes to pass. In other words, the power of the shalit is he has to be very careful what comes out of his mouth, because what he comes out of his mouth can actually happen. And what happened? And Amaimer died. So, Rod?
It's in Kohen.
Who, Amaimer?
Oh, Tzvi said something.
Yeah, I didn't understand. So, in other words, the Gemara is saying that Amaimer wanted to be lenient, but it can only be lenient up to a point.
But Tzvi, speak up.
It's in Koheles, not in Mishnah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Koheles. Yeah, I forgot where it was. Yeah, it's in Koheles. So, in other words, the edict of the ruler comes to pass, and you have to be very careful in what you say. And therefore, Amaimer died, and then the problem arose. What about the Yarshim? The Yarshim now say, you got to pay us. Again, this is an aside on the whole question. One anecdote to this is that when I was in yeshiva, we had a gathering of many Gedolim, and Friday night and on Shabbos, I forget who exactly it was, got up to speak. And one of the Rosh Yeshivas had a father, a very older father, who was sitting at the table. And so this Rosh Yeshiva went ahead, and he was sort of esteemed guests, Rabbi so-and-so, Rabbi so-and-so, and he referred to the Rosh Yeshiva's father as Zechreina Levracha.
Oh,
Right?
Oh, yeah.
He said Zechreina Levracha, and he was sitting there. So all of a sudden there was a tumult, and the Rosh Yeshiva himself, the son, said, no harm, no foul. He's sitting here, so we don't have to be concerned that in front of him he said Zechreina Levracha. I remember this so clearly because, again, here the Gemara is telling us that how careful the shalit has to be, not to say something that can come to pass, and in that particular case, they made light of the fact. Now, obviously, there was, the Rosh Yeshiva's father was alive, and I don't remember how long he lived, but he didn't die instantly. But the fact of the matter is that the Gemara is telling us that be careful, because a Maimer gave a psak, which we can all buy into, but that's a Maimer. If not for a Maimer, then it would be a problem. Therefore, the Shtori Mechuzah are not acceptable, because other than a Maimer, anybody else would collect. And if they collect, then it's ribbis. That's why the Gemara gave this as an aside, because Why did Shtar Mechuzah don't work? Amema said they can work. I'll forego the profit. I'll forego the profit, and therefore I'm not going to take advantage. But if Amema is the only one who says it and he's not around, then we have a problem. So that's the Shtori Mechuzah. Okay, the last thing we want to just cover of the three halachas is the Gemara says that the halacha is not like Hakire Nishoi, that it's not like the shtar, or actually the Chavir is not a shtar, it's a lease. It's a lease that they did in Nishoi. Why? That's not acceptable. What did they do? So in Nishoi, the cost of Hachi, this is what they did. Mashkin le planya ariye le planya. Okay, Jay, you and I'm a lender, you're a borrower, you have land, and you want to pledge your land to me. I lend you $100, you pledge the land to me. When I get the land, I can do whatever I want with the land. I mean, in order not to have ribbis, I have to take off some of the produce. But let's say I want to lend it to Michael. We know that the minimum time is a year. So for the year, I'm saying, Michael, you need land. I'm going to lend you the land. And you pay me for the land. Totally acceptable. Because I am in control. I, the lender, am in control of the land. And I can lend it to whomever I want during the period of time that's under my rishus. Not a problem. Where's the problem? The problem is that I got your land. V'hoda chavora minei emas kenoah. And immediately, v'hoda chavora minei, v'hoda minei, and immediately after I got your pledged land, I turned around and I made a deal with you to lease the land. Not Michael, third party, but you. You, the borrower, are now going to pay me, the lender, rent for borrowing my land. Okay, we get the scenario, right?
Started as collateral, though.
It's collateral, and the collateral's okay. But now the borrower comes to the lender and says, I need this land. Can I pay you rent? If I rented it to Michael, 100% okay. But what about if you come to me and say to me, I need this land. Can I rent it from you? And you say yes. Okay, that's now the scenario. Amos kanoi the akanya nale. So if we did that and we agreed to that, then the people looking at the deal would say, wait a minute, this is ribbis. Why? Because I borrowed money from you and you paid and you pledged the land. Now you're paying me on top of everything else. You're paying me rent for the land. That looks like ribbis, right? To the appearance, it looks like ribbis. It wouldn't be ribbis if I lent it to Michael, but because I'm lending it back to you, and you're paying me for money of my own land, says the Gemara, that looks like ribbis. No question about it. So how can you do that? Therefore, Chazal say that these kinds of deals you should not make. In other words, it's okay to lend to a third person because no one is going to say ribbis. I have the land. I'm entitled to do what I want with the land, and I lend it to Michael. But if I'm lending it back to you, and people will say, oh, he borrowed $100, and now he's paying him another $50 for the land. That looks like ribbis. Says the Gemara, therefore, you can't do that. Okay? You can't do that. So what should you do? But now, meaning, in other words, we were talking about nowadays in the time of the Gemara, that we did something different. What did we do? That we wrote down in a document. In other words, everything used to be oral. When it was oral, it was kind of like helter-skelter. I lent you money, you're going to pay me back. I say to you that you can go ahead and work the field, and you'll say, I'll work the field and I'll pay you rent. That's what it used to be. But, says the Gemara, now, in that period of time, there was no longer just you and I talking. Now there's an actual document that documents the entire procedure, right? Kani Mine, that I was coned of the land from you because of the loan. Vishahina kama idoni, and I sat on the field for a period of time. V'hoda chavara, and then I leased it back to you. In other words, there was a gap between my loaning the property to you and sorry, there was a gap between your giving me the property as a pledge and my lending it back to you for a profit. So then there would be a clear demarcation that it wasn't ribis, because it would say in the document, I loaned you money. You and you gave me a field. A month, 2, 3 months later, now I can immediately lend it to Michael, but I can't lend it to you. So if we have a period of time by which I have to hold the property and then lend it to you, that's a clear demarcation, and that should make the shtori neshoi acceptable, because no one will be choshish ribis if you give me a piece of property that I hold on to, either work it or whatever I do. But the problem was that I immediately turned it back to you to work, and everybody's going to say, "Oh, that's ribis," right? So in other words, what he did, the way they resolved it is they say, no, you have to write in a star. This is what it was. Kadesh lotino deles mipnei lovin. Why do we do it that way? Because if we didn't do it that way, then no one would lend money to anybody else. In other words, that's the same problem we had in the past, is commerce would come to a standstill if my hands are tied, that I can't lend it back to you. And you pay me a rent. Then why should I do that? So the Gemara says, if you do it and you document it, then it's okay, because then there won't be a chash ribis, right? So the Gemara says, if you do it that way, shaper dummy. Says the Gemara, no. V'lav milsahi. We're balancing ribis against commerce. And the Gemara's final word is that ribis trumps the commerce, even though we encourage people to lend to each other so that, commerce can go on. I lend you money, you do business, you pay me back. That's what commerce is about. And we know from time and time again that Chazal never wanted to inhibit that. But the Gemara says that when that stacks up against the potential for ribis, because someone will say, oh, the borrower is paying more than the amount of the loan, i.e., because he's renting it, that we can't accept. So even though the Gemara wanted to find a way that we can get around this by saying that, oh, there was a period of time between the loan and the rental, that's how the Gemara gets around it. There's a period of time, a shtar, that says, you're giving me a piece of land for the loan, and now I'm renting it back to you. Says the Gemara, they thought, oh, with the shtar, it should be okay. Says the Gemara, no, that chakire neshoi, that this type of operation smacks too much of ribis to allow it to happen. Again, we can argue that point because I'm entitled as the lender to loan it to Michael, and I can make a profit. But you, Jay, come to me and says, I need this land. I want to work the land. I'm happy to pay you a fair price. The problem is, to the outside world, that fair price is going to look like ribis. So the Gemara wanted to give an answer. Oh, but we have a shtar, And the Gemara's final answer is a shtar is not good enough because it will still seem in the public's eye that you're paying me ribis for the loan. So it's a very interesting thought because, even though, again, this is commerce, the Gemara is carving out an exception and saying this smacks too much of ribis that even though we want commerce, we certainly don't want a chashash ribis. A chashash, it isn't ribis. Clearly, it's not ribis, but it's a chashash ribis. And we've said all along until now, so this is sort of the final punctuation mark, is that how careful we have to be with ribis, that even the appearance of ribis has to be avoided. This is the appearance of ribis, even though in fact it's not. And therefore, says Rava, the halacha is not like this. You can't do this. So these are the three cases. Tarshid Rav Papa is the one we have the most problem with. I think the other two are pretty straightforward. And so when something seems to be okay, the Chazal Rava is saying it's not okay because, again, chashash ribis. So we have to leave it at that because the Tarshid Rav Papa will remain a question. But Mitzvah Shem, next week, we will start a new Mishnah, but we'll now turn the page and start talking about the very famous issue of Iska, Heter Iska. So the Gemara, the Mishnah, and the Gemara are now going to get into that question of what is acceptable that is not ribis if two parties make a transaction. So Mitzvah Shem will pick that up next week. But again, you see how Chazal works. That when we give a psak, the psak is to prevent the possibility of ribis. A maimer said, "There's no ribis. I'm going to agree to take whatever it is." Says the Gemara, "No, a maimer. You may do it, but the world isn't going to do it." Meaning your Yarshim, other people are not going to do it, and therefore we have to protect the integrity of the deal by saying there should be no ribis, and therefore you're not allowed to do it.
I wonder how long this debate took place among the Rabbanim before they came up with their answers.
Yeah, well, you're right, because Rava was one of the later Amoraim. So it could well be over a period of the Amoraim, I don't know, 150 years more. There was a great debate. And finally, and again, usually what we say is that we follow the later psak. So Rava's psak may have been different than the psak in the earlier Amoraim, but we go by Rava because Rava was later. So presumably he was able to take everything in and say, no, this is my psak. So, but you're right. I mean, I'm sure there was a great debate. And we see that. And we see even Maimer weighed in and said, no, the halacha should be okay. Why not?
Right.
So, but the Gemara, the integrity of ribis, and that's really the punctuation line here, is that the integrity of not taking ribis is overarching to commerce that would otherwise be okay. There's no reason why we shouldn't allow something like this except for the chashash ribis.
Yeah.
So I think we've come full circle. And we made our point. The ribis is ribis, and the Torah considers it very serious, and we shouldn't do it.
Yes.